Alright, with the announcement of XCOM 2, I decided to revisit XCOM Enemy Unknown. Unfortunately, I've only really played the Long War mod, and once you start Long War, it's very hard to go back to Enemy Unknown, because Long War changes a lot of things for the better. It has some difficulties, and a lot of it is people getting into it fresh, because it's very different from Enemy Unknown. There's a couple ways around it. One is to just be really good at the game. I am not that person. Um, I understand what to do for the most part. God damn it, Mimi. One sec. Alright, as I was saying, there's a couple ways to play this game. One is to be very good. I'm not that person. I prefer to play a lot more fun, basically. So there's a lot of strategies that I won't employ. I don't count tiles and stuff like that. I don't hard counter based on time, because there's a lot of strategy involved with, what month you're in, what day you're on, stuff like that. I kind of just wing it. And I was going to go through the settings so everyone knows how scrubby I'm actually playing, and as kind of like a tutorial for people that don't know how to do it. So you go to Nexus, which is the site for mods. Type in Long War, go download, and right now I'm playing on beta 15e. As far as I know, beta 15e is going to be one of the last releases until the full release. So the next one will be Long War, not beta. Well, at least that's what my assumption is. I have not actually played 15e yet. The last one I played was 15d2, which is a couple iterations ago. So it's been a little bit since I played, so there's a couple changes that I'm not familiar with. So you download this, and it'll end up at this file here. So you run it, and it'll save in your Steam. All the explanations I'm gonna give is if you have it installed during Steam. If you have it installed standalone, you're gonna have to figure out the directories yourself. Alright. They recommend that you read the README, which does make sense. And a lot of people claim that it's a requirement to play this game, but I never felt that way. I've not read the README yet, and if you have the difficulty down enough, I wouldn't say down enough, I would say forgiving enough, you could feel your way out through the game. The thing you want to realize about Long War is it's not necessarily about winning. It's not like Enemy Unknown where any campaign, any strategy is going to win you the game. You have to actually plan a little bit, and you kind of have to be willing to fail to learn. So the directory to install it is going to be in the Z drive. Well, not the Z drive. It's going to be in whatever drive it's in. Steam, Steam apps, common, XCOM, and then XEW if you have the expansion. That stands for Enemy Within. And then XCOM game and config. This is where the bulk of your editing is going to come into play. This is where you really change the game for your difficulty, how hard you want it to be. First things first, I believe it's an input. I don't know why everything's opening on my second monitor. So right off the bat, this is very intimidating, but we're not going to deal with all of these. This is just a bunch of bindings. Let's see where it is. Okay, maybe it's not in here. Okay, well, ignore that then. Oh, here. Okay. Here's something interesting that I wanted to do. most people do not know is that there is a slow mode in this game and a fast forward mode. I will play in the fast forward mode, so for those who can't handle it, I'm sorry in advance. And I also set it for even faster because I find it really tedious to wait for the soldiers to run to their position, aim, do their whole spiel about how they missed, etc., etc. So under bindings, F9 would be the default. There's a command to speed it up for 1.5 speed. I switched that to 2. And yes, it is crazy fast and a little bit annoying, but you could get through twice as many games. That's not what I came here for. There was something. Oh, game data maybe. This looked correct. So these are just a couple of changes I make whenever I start a campaign. You're not gonna have to do this every time. This is only when you reinstall, which is what I just did, because going from D2 to E is a new install. And okay, this was the command I was looking for, but they changed it. It's now a second wave mod, but you used to have to switch this to make it so the entire tree is visible, but I guess not anymore. Is it this one? Default game. I'm looking for the file to where you could rename ranks, and since I can't find it, I may have to pause this and come back. Game data. Okay, I know game core is where you change the majority of it, but I'm looking for that one thing first. Probably game data. This kind of looks right. Okay, it's not. I'm gonna pause this and come back. Alright, the reason I couldn't find it is because I'm in the wrong folder. It's not a config file. You go back to the previous folder, XCOM game, and it's under localization and international, I think, and XCOM game, I believe. Alright, I think it's this one, and this is a pretty big file. Is it here? Come on, where are you? Close. I feel like I'm close. This is the names of everything, basically. Let's see if I could. Okay, here. Bam. Here it is. These are the names. So, private, first class, PFC, right? The problem I have with this is once it starts getting to sergeant, tech sergeant, gunnery sergeant, master sergeant. I mean, I know master sergeant, but like the others kind of blend together because I don't know my military. So what I do is I change these to be numerical. Now, this is not as professional, and it is kind of immersion breaking if you're into that. So you could change these to whatever you want them to be. I've seen people do N1 through 7 if you're into Mass Effect, stuff like that. And this is not even something you need to do. But for me, it makes it a lot easier to see on the fly which soldiers are at what quality. Because there's nothing more frustrating than getting a sniper, expecting them to get a shot, or expecting them to have abilities that they don't have because you're lazy and you don't look things through, and then you end up ruining your whole turn. And this just helps me figure that out instantly before I even give the command, rather than after the fact and realizing, that's why. I do the same thing with the psi. I don't even know if this matters, to tell you the truth, but I do it anyways. I'm pretty sure this does not show up on any like any character's sheet information. Like I think it only shows up when they're leveling, and I don't even know what these call signs mean, because I've actually never even seen it in the game. So this is probably not necessary to change, but I've just been changing it out of habit at this point. So you save it, and that's that. Now we're getting to the juice of this. And Mimi's barking again. One sec. Alright, so we're back into the config folder, config, and then this is the big thing, DGC, default game core. This is where almost everything in terms of the game is going to be changed. This is where you can change every ability, every stat that everyone has. Right here, this line is somewhat important, pretty early on. This is, you could change the starting stats, or your base stats for all your soldiers. So you can do it in normal difficulty, classic difficulty, brutal, and impossible difficulty. So each difficulty has their own stats. So for example, if I want my aim, let's say I could put it as 5. So I'll have like on average 5% more aim on all my soldiers. Not 5% more of the base, but 5% additional. So if I would have had a 35% shot, on average, changing this to 5 will give it a 40% shot. The math is not exact, but that's kind of the idea. Basically, by changing the base stat, the range that you could roll for that stat in game with the stat points is going to be higher. So personally, I like mobility higher, and I don't really care about the rest. I like mobility higher because the way I play is very flank oriented, and if you can't move, you can't flank. And health and stuff like that, health, damage, defense, aim, it doesn't matter too much if you could flank. If you're flanking them, they're probably going to die, especially with the second wave options I choose, which I will go into later. So that's all you're going to need to do, because I play on normal, because like I said, I'm a nub. This is the stats on all difficulties, I believe, for all the units, and I don't touch any of these. Let the units have whatever they're gonna have. You could change stuff in here, although in my experience I haven't needed to, nor do I really understand how. Like, you could take off abilities or stuff that you don't like them to have. You could lower their crit, stuff like that. But for the most part, I don't have troubles with specific mobs. Like, there's no specific enemy that's gonna give me trouble. I'm gonna have trouble if I just play badly, because everyone has a counter. So the developers of Long War did a really good job of labeling all this for your convenience. So like number of starting soldier, that's a pretty self-explanatory. So like if I change it to 50 from 40, I now have 10 more soldiers to start with. That saves you essentially 250 credits. And likewise, I lower the cost of the soldiers. The reason for this is because for the most part, this does not matter. It only really affects the very, very early game, and anything that only affects the really early game is kind of shitty, because then you're just remaking early game over and over again, try to get a good run, and that's just no fun for anyone. Might as well just streamline that and get to the mid and late game where things actually change. Early game, you have the least amount of options, and therefore it's the least amount of fun. Barracks capacity, 100 is the default, and I just leave it at 100. I've never really had a need for more than that, and then once you try to push it too much more, you end up just not using a lot of units, and then at that point, why have it? These 4 or 5 lines, 5 lines, and I guess a lot more, maybe all this, I don't know, is the formulas for how they roll stats. So they take the base and they use this number to figure out the aim. So 2 times the mid minus, or I guess they average it. I don't know. I don't mess with these because I don't understand it. I've tried to fiddle with these numbers, and a very small change makes a very big change in the final amount. Side training hours. I cut this down by quite a bit. And I'm going to bring out my little calculator, because I cannot do math. So 192 divided by 24 is 8 days for side training, which is insane. No one has that type of time. So I set it to 72 hours, which is 3 days for side training. Yes, that makes it a lot easier, but that's kind of the point. Psi on its own is not super good. Psi is good with other things, especially when you're bad, like me. It's no fun having a soldier out for 8 days and they come back and you're not even going to use the ability because the first ability sucks. You kind of just want to get them through those rough patches and get to the fun stuff. This percentage I change because it's kind of silly to have it so low. Basically there's a will cap, so if the will is above a certain amount for the skill, they have this percentage to learn it. So I think 45 is default. So if I'm understanding this correctly, if you're qualified for the ability, you have a 45% chance to learn it, which is too low. So I put it to, let's do 65. I think I tried 75 before, but that was too high. You just learn everything. Everyone has like a 90% chance to learn a skill, and that's just silly. Max hours a soldier can be injured. 1320 is quite a long time. I think that's almost a month. Let's see, 1320 divided by 24, 55 days. That's 2 months. That's an insane amount of hospital time. If someone's out for 55 months, you might as well dismiss them because they're useless. So let's cut that down. Let's say 2 weeks at the max. So let's say 14 times 24, so 336. That's still a substantial amount of time. 2 weeks, and this is max days, right? So if someone drops to no health and you stabilize them, they'll be out for 2 weeks, which is still a very long time. I think that's still very fair. By default, 2 months, they're basically screwed. I don't change these numbers much because it's the formula for how it's calculated, the random interval, and I don't want to deal with that. And this is hours of fatigue per officer level. You could lower this if you want, but I never found this to be a problem. If the officer's out for a couple more days, it's not that big a deal. I think at max officer rank, they'll be out for 3 more days, which doesn't matter. Shiv values are here. This is for like repair times and stuff like that, but I don't actually use shivs. I don't think they're worth the currency, so I don't use them. But if you want to use them, the formulas are here. This doesn't matter to me. This is how they choose what class rookies are appointed, but I play with commander's choice, so I get to choose that myself, so I don't need to worry about that. This is default rookie colors and rookie gear. I don't worry about that because I just change everybody. Same thing with all this. Don't worry about any of that. XP levels is how much experience you need. Don't worry about that. You could lower it if you need to, I guess. I would never lower experience levels, but I could understand lowering psi levels because later on psi becomes really grindy. I don't touch any of this. This is all the stat progressions for the classes. And this stuff here. This is will progression in terms of leveling and stuff. I don't deal with that. This is how much money I think each... Nope, this is not money. This is the likelihood that you'll be a certain race for each rookie. So a weight of 45, so you're twice as likely to be from the United States as from Australia, as an example. So I don't want to deal with any of that. Alright, here's till we get to the good stuff. This is all to do with game mechanics. So low cover bonus. So 30 is a 30 base defense. So if you're behind low cover, you give a negative 30% chance to their aim. And these are flat amounts. This isn't like a percentage. So like if they have a 100% chance to hit you, it doesn't drop it by 30% of that. Or that's not a good example. Let's say if they have a 60% chance to hit you, it doesn't drop their chance by 30% of that, which would be 20. No, it drops you by a flat 30. So if they have a 60% chance to hit you, now they have a 30% chance to hit you in low cover. Alright, I'm using Bandicam to record because the XTORY only records games as far as I know, where Bandicam could record the desktop. So it stopped recording after 10 minutes because it's a free one. So I'm going to try to continue off where it cut off. So the way cover bonus works, I'm just going to go brief because I just talked to myself for 20 minutes. It gave a 50% increase. So it's from 30 to 45. So that means that if it's a flat damage reduction or a flat chance reduction, not percentage. So if they have a 60% chance to hit and I'm behind low cover, it'll minus 45 because of the cover. So that means I'll have a 15% chance to hit me. I make high cover bonus 70, which is absurdly high, and I kind of feel like it should. This works both ways, keep in mind. So if they're behind full cover, it's also very hard to hit them. I hate the idea of just standing behind cover and just taking pot shots at each other with 30% chance to hits until you get lucky and shoot them through a wall. It's silly. And by that logic, I make air evade defense 0. This one line, if you only change this line, would be the biggest change to the difficulty in the game out of everything else. But I feel it makes complete sense. Air evade is the default chance flying units have to just avoid the hit, which by default is 30, which is insanely high. That means that a drone flying a foot off the ground has as much defense as a sectoid behind low cover, which is silly. So I changed it to 0, so that means all flyers are flankable, which is very brutal to them, but they have the ability to land if they choose and use cover. Unfortunately, the AI does not really understand that logic, but what can you do? The alternative is to just have a drone tank a full rookie team. I've had a full rookie team take like 2.5 shots each and not kill a drone because of the inherent damage reduction and just the dodge and rookies sucking. So this is a change I could not live without, because without this, drones, seekers, floaters are just a fucking nightmare to deal with. No cover defense is for units that can't take cover. Main ones being mechs, sectopods, and like chrysalids. I don't change this too much because it kind of makes sense for them to be inherently tanky. Like, I would prefer for them to have no defense and have like innate damage reduction, but as far as I know, there's no way to really do that without going through a whole bunch of lines of the configs, so I just leave it as is. I don't deal with a bunch of this because this is second wave mods, and then the ones I do use, I edit elsewhere, so I'll go over that later. Grapple distance is how far you could grapple, and then a bunch of this stuff is the formulas for panic, like the chance you have to shoot your allies and stuff like that. And as far as I know, I've been playing Long War for a bit, and I've never panicked and shot an ally, so whatever's in these formulas must remove that as a chance. So I don't deal with it. Perk settings, this is all the numerical values for perks. I don't change any of these because a lot of these perks are balanced around the numbers, and then changes those numbers makes that perk good. And yeah, I don't like to deal with that. Plus, I don't really like the straight stat perks anyways. And then this also affects the enemies, and enemy perks are a lot more abundant. I don't deal with this. This is the chance that chrysalid kills turn into zombies even though they're off screen. I I don't know what this stuff is, so I don't touch it. I don't know what this stuff is, so I don't touch it. This is the likelihood that they would use abilities. So like, just using these two lines as an example, the Thin Min will do the Spit Cloud more likely in these 3 difficulties than they will in normal difficulty. I don't touch these too much. I could see dropping like Grenade down and stuff like that because they're annoying to play against, but I'm not too worried about that. Interceptor refuel hours. Even though it says interceptor refuel hours, it has nothing to do with the interceptor or the refuel time. It's apparently alien research bonus, so I don't touch that too much. I think this is how much research they start with, or how long they have to wait until they start researching. Nevertheless, I don't really touch it too much. A lot of these are configs for like the difficulties of each difficulty, the like funding amount. I don't touch that for the most part. I feel that the funding is, well, okay, here, this is the one I do. So right here, normal difficulty, you have like a 50% increase in cash. I just straight up change this to 2, so now you have double the cash of a brutal run. So I find if you just change that number, just that one, cash is not as much of a problem. And you could adjust that as you want. You could edit like country starting and stuff like that if you wanted, but for my playthroughs, if I just fix that, I don't have a problem. We're going down. These are the continent bonuses. I don't touch any of those. This is you know, the stat bonuses you get for having a satellite over a continent, starting bonuses, stuff like that. This is how much scientists and stuff they give you. I guess I better cut the video before I get cut off again. So I've edited these in the past, but every time I do, I have to look it up. So let me look up the numbers real quick. Alright. Mechtoids and floaters by default drop Meld. And what this does is, if you double the Meld amount for Mechtoids and you double the Meld amount for heavy floaters, right, this is not just a heavy floater. I believe this is heavy floater as well as floater. So since it's 510, right, that means it's half of a Meld for floaters and 1 Meld for heavy floater. So changing it to 1030 is 10 Meld for floaters and 30 Meld for heavy floaters. I think, no, 1 Meld for floaters, 3 Meld for heavy floaters is what it does. And that's 8 Meld for Mechtoids, which is still not that much, but it's much better than half of Meld. And if you're wondering how half a Meld works, I believe it rounds down. So if you have 5 floaters in a mission, you kill all 5, you only get 2 Meld, which is nothing. And then in this situation, you would get 5 Meld, which is still almost nothing, but at least it's nicer. I don't change most of the currency things. For the most part, I found them to be pretty fair and balanced, and I don't deal with them. This is like how many alloys and stuff you would get from ship crashes and stuff like that. Ship crashes, ship landings. For the most part, I find that to be fine. You could change starting labs, starting scientists, stuff like that. I boost up the number of starting engineers and the number of starting scientists by 5. This allows a lot of the earlier tech to be a little quicker, so you don't have to spend a month doing certain things. And in the long run, I don't think it affects too much. Like I said, a lot of these changes that I make are for the early game, because the early game is the least fun, it's the most grindy, and you can make or break a run very quickly in the early game. If you make a mistake with your research path or search and training, stuff like that, it could completely ruin a run before you know it. This allows you a little bit of leeway in that early game, and it doesn't affect the end game for the most part. Once you have like 200 scientists, the extra 5 is not going to make a difference. You could change the amount of power and stuff that plants give you, but I don't deal with that. Okay, I deal with this though. Number of starting vents, steam vents. I like to double, well not double, 2.5 times, I guess. I go up to 5. It feels very much with only 2 vents that you kind of feel like you should just keep remaking that beginning tutorial mission just so you could get good vent position, which is kind of shitty. With 5, it improves the likelihood that you have relevant vents, and then even if they're not relevant, you don't feel too bad. Repair hours. 600 hours. Let's see, 600 hours divided by 24. That's 25 days. That's a very long time. I would think a week and a half at the most is pretty fair. So 10 days times 24, that's 240 hours. So 240 hours max repair time is fair, I think. Keep in mind that changing these repair times like very heavily affects the balance of the game, but we don't care about that. We care about fun. Rearm hours. 168 divided by 24 is 7 days. So it takes a week to put a gun on a ship. No, that's too much. I've done it at 1 day, but 1 day felt a little cheesy, so I put it to 48 hours, so 2 days. The reason this stat exists is so you don't just buy one laser cannon, use it for an encounter, take it off, switch it to another guy. That's what the balancing is around. As long as you don't cheese the game like that, I feel like lowering this doesn't really affect the balance of the game. As long as you know, go by the honor rule of just not unequipping a laser cannon every time you have to send out a new interceptor. And then for that same reason, I feel dropping the transfer time to a day rather than a day and a half is fair. Sky Ranger maintenance 20, doesn't really matter. This is a fun number that I've utilized a lot in the past, which is the starting squad size, which I guess defaults to 6. I've gone up to 8. I've even gone up to 10. The problem is that the more you go, like the higher number you go, you start having problems with deployment where they won't have enough spawn locations, so they'll spawn on rocks or they'll spawn off map. There'll be a lot more remakes you'll have to do on every mission in order to get them to actually spawn on the map. I believe there is a new second wave option where they just bump this by 2, so I'm just going to do that instead of changing this number to 8. So normally I would change this number to 8, but I think the second wave option does the same thing and something else as well, so I'm just going to try that this time. Uplink costs, stuff like that, don't need that. I don't affect the alien AI, but these things right here are crash timers. So a UFO crash, by the way, like why does a crash disappear after 36 hours? I don't really know. So let's say we want, these are for some reason are in half hours. So if we want a crash to last 3 days, let's go 3 times 24 times, no, 3 times 48, and I can't type. So 144. So if we have it at 144 half hours, that'll be 3 days, I believe. So terror, how much time for a terror mission? Have to do it in a day? I guess that makes sense. I would rather it not. Let's do 2 days, so that would be 96. That means I have 2 days to respond to a terror mission, 3 days to respond to a UFO crash. UFO landeds, I can understand being a short timer, so let's say 24 hours, so you got a day for that. Abductions, no, I don't really care about that. Abductions are gonna go quick. Oh, but I do care about council missions. So let's bump this to 96. This is a huge change, and I feel bad doing it a little bit, but I'm more concerned about the council missions rather than the abduction timer. Satellite hunting, I believe these are percentages for how likely the scouts are to find your satellite, and by extension the hunters are to shoot down your satellites. I don't deal with these for the most part. I don't struggle too much with the air game, but I'm pretty sure that's because of the interceptor rearm time and stuff like that. Not the rearm, the repair time and stuff like that. The problem with the air game is when you fall behind and you have like 5 or 6 interceptors on a country just constantly on repair, and you could never send more than 1 interceptor per engagement, but cutting down the repair time affects that quite a bit. Don't deal with most of this. These is the stats for the items. Okay, arc thrower. There is a change I make. Let me find it. So, let's see. I don't even really know what I'm looking at. Oh. I'll link to where this is, where I'm finding this copy paste. But basically, you change the line to add, where is it? I have a really hard time scrolling in Notepad. Oh, I saw it. I feel like it just wants to jump like 50 lines ahead. I just saw it. I think it's this one at properties too. Can't react, no, pistol. Right here, I think it's this line. The fuck. Oh man, this is getting me sick. Alright, whatever. It's properties line, I believe 2 and 4. So, no, 3 and 5. I'm just gonna give you the copy paste for it, but basically you add that it could be a pistol and you add that it could be a secondary, and it removes it from the backpack, I believe. So it's no longer like a grenade slot, it's a pistol slot. And then further down, which is in this stuff. Alright, I don't know when I cut off the recording, hopefully I don't miss anything. Basically it changes the eye alloys, which is apparently has nothing to do with the alloy cost. It affects what stats are on it, and apparently 94,000 is the number to give it gunslinger, which apparently allows you to use it at pistol range. But I'm just gonna copy paste the whole thing. Yeah, 94,000. So if you change that number, it gives a gunslinger. So when you equip the arc thrower in the pistol slot, it treats it as a pistol, so you have pistol range. This is an insane buff. It completely changes the way you could play, and ironically it makes arc thrower one of the most accurate guns in the game, because if you get them low, arc thrower often has a higher chance to hit and a longer range than any gun. A little bit unfair, but it makes the game more fun. The rest of these items I don't affect anything. I did play around with lowering the meld cost for a lot of the mech stuff, but I found that it wasn't really necessary. I believe that's about it for the rest of the perks. Yeah, and a bunch of the configs. This is a bunch of perk stuff. I don't touch most of that. So there, done. Save it. Alright, so we're gonna go through patcher GUI, which is how you install patches which affect the hex code. A lot of times they will just look like a bunch of text and numbers and stuff, and it's hard to understand what it actually does and how to use it. So you make a new notepad text document, and this one is going to be for Eclipse's tab target fix. Eclipse 666, I believe is his name. He's the guy that basically does the majority of these patches. He's a beast. So if you go tab target, paste it. It looks like a bunch of bullshit hex code. I don't understand it. Anyways, that's it. You save it. Then you go to the, I'm gonna open it in a new window. So I have this open over here. So you go to patcher GUI, open it up, browse. Well, you're gonna have to set this this top one, by the way, to the game folder, which is XCW, XCOM enemy with them. And then get the tab target. It'll open up his hex code. You apply it. It'll find the relevant line, replace it, patch successful, and then you're done. That's it. And then if you ever want to uninstall it, whenever you install something, it'll install a uninstall text, which I guess is the backup for what it replaced, and you basically override it with the uninstall text, and that's how you remove a patch. So you basically do this for all the files you have. I believe a lot of these are out of date, So like I'll try using this one, which is the file for red fog that gives a more logical curve in terms of life to accuracy. I believe by default, if you're not under like 4 life, red fog doesn't affect you, but this makes it so like even if you're at 90% life, red fog affects you, which is very little, which is I think makes more sense. I wonder if it works with 15E. It does. Okay, so some of these do work, but I know some of these do not. I mean, work with the new one, so you have to get the updated ones. Meld alert makes it so it plays a sound, a more distinct sound when the meld is going to explode. Alright, that one worked. Soldier XP. I feel like there's going to be a more updated one of this. Yep, alright, I'm going to go find an updated one of that. I'll be right back. Alright, so I was trying to look it up. The soldier experience doesn't exist anymore in terms of a mod because it's part of the default long war, so that's cool. But I found a couple other ones I wanted to do. Alien sight range indicator will give a visual range to how far you are from aggroing the enemies, which if you watch Beagle Rush's video, he spends a lot of time counting the tiles. I guess 14, I believe it is the tile for like if you get within 14 tiles range, they could see you and then they like activate. And counting is annoying, but it is a very good asset, but I just don't do it, so this will allow me to do it without actually having to. This one is as part of the, I don't even know the name of the DLC. Whatever one gives you a net, there's a mission called Furies where you have to go into a ship and rescue a bunch of Psi prisoners. And the problem with this is that they all start with some random bullshit size, and I believe this allows you to pick the own psi abilities for them. Either that or it makes it less random. I don't know, something along those lines. I've never used it before. I'm gonna try it. Hit chance. This is, it shows you the hit chances that you had whenever you do an overwatch shot or a lightning reflex dodge. It shows the hit chances for all that. I don't know how annoying that would be, but that kind of sounds cool, so I wanted to see what it looked like. Oh, mech levels, I got an updated version of that, and apparently it's not updated enough. You know what, whatever, I don't care enough. I'll try to find a relevant one if people care enough. Gender, I don't know what if this still works, but I like to name my characters off of One Piece characters if you're familiar with the anime, and there's not a lot of females. So if you set this to 20, that means 20% of the recruits will be female, so they'll be majority male. It's not a, you know, sexist thing. It's just there's more male characters than female characters, so you just struggle to find female names. There's only so many characters that you could gender bend, and it doesn't make, like, it's not an atrocious like lack of sense. So that's it for these. So they're all installed, so I'm pretty sure that's it for that, and we're ready to start the game.